call the roll.
Brooks.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Beer.
Here.
Sherman. Stelling.
Here.
Dowling.
Here.
Bowman.
Here.
Winters.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Item 4 is discussion and action on the mayor's appointment of Wanda Gale Swallow as city council member for Ward 2, Seat 2 for an unexpired term ending in April 2023. Brandon Sherman has sold his house and moved outside the city limits. His position, he's no longer able to continue in his position if you don't live inside the city limits. So we have an open position for which I, like with the last appointment, was looking for somebody that would add to the diversity of the council. I have for my recommendation, for your consideration, Gale Swallow. She represents a demographic of which we don't have here, retirees, another female for the council. She's got family involvement in law enforcement, as well as a history in education and EMS services. I think she'll be a good contributor to the work of our council, and she then has my recommendation to y'all for this open position.
I motion to approve the mayor's recommendation of Wanda Gale Swallow as city council member for Ward 2, Seat 2 for an unexpired term ending in April 2023.
I'll second.
Go ahead. I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Winters, a second by Mr. Brooks, to appoint Wanda Gale Swallow as city council member for Ward 2, Seat 2 for an unexpired term ending in April 2023. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters.
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
Dowling.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Stelling.
Yes.
Beer.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Rick, the next item is the swearing in of Wanda Gale Swallow.
Period. You will raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma, and that you will not knowingly receive directly or indirectly any money or other valuable thing for the performance and non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to your office other than the compensation allowed by law? And do you further swear or affirm you will faithfully discharge your duties as a city council person to the best of your ability?
I do.
Congratulations.
Welcome aboard. Item 6 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at city council meetings will be approved by one vote of the council. Any member of the council desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of the consideration and action on the following items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held September 20th, 2021. And item B, approval of claims in the amount of $321,602.46 and payroll expenses of $184,166.21. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Stelling, a second by Mr. Winters to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Stelling.
Yes.
Winters.
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
Dowling.
Yes.
Swallow.
Yes.
Beer.
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Item 8, reports from staff. First item is the Ordinance Review Committee meeting held on September 21st, 2021. Mr. Stelling, you have a report for us?
gone at that time.
I can't remember who all was there. Troy, were you there?
I missed a couple of them, so I'm not sure if I was.
Daniel?
We had two. I know that one of the big topics of conversation that we had, and I don't remember if that was in the September or October meeting, was a discussion around our current beekeeping ordinance, and how that is in violation of the Oklahoma Apiary Act, and kind of what we are looking forward to going forward. We brought in Dr. Thompson from the university to kind of discuss what that kind of looks like as far as the relevant habits of bees and their kind of, yeah. So that was, I believe, basically the only thing that we really discussed. There was some discussion on nuisance ordinances as well.
Yes, that was the October meeting was the beekeeping one, and then September meeting, we talked about nuisances a little bit more in depth.
So we're just still exploring some of what, on that one, we're still kind of reading through some of what the other municipalities have done, what kind of the state law reads, and what, if any, changes may need to happen to our current ordinance.
Any questions? Thank you. Next item is a Public Safety Committee meeting held on September 22nd, 2021. Let's see. Well, Sadie or Taylor?
Do you want to report?
I certainly don't have anything prepared. If I'm right, that was the
Yeah.
primary meeting where we discussed our findings on the signs of school zones. I think we have elected to have published in the paper the notice that we are going to do no parking on that
Street by Washington.
7th.
that 7th Street, and then we're going to see about updating the signs and crosswalk signs around the schools, kind of better on that. We also discussed the ability that determined that it is the school parking lots preference on certain corners that can be obstructed, and maybe reach out to them. And then I think the other thing was we discussed our ongoing plan about the ambulance rates and that, but no decision was made on that. I think that's
Yeah, I think
a short
that's
summary
it,
of the major items that I remember.
Does council have any questions?
In regards to the no parking on 7th Street, that's the street that runs in the front of Washington, correct?
Yes, from my understanding is some of that street is blocked off, but we wanted to continue it down all the way to the schools. There have been, I guess, issues from bus drivers, I think, about it being a difficult corner to navigate if people are parking specifically during drop-off hours.
South of the school on 7th Street.
With that stop sign, like right after they place the cones, people are parking on both sides, so with the wider vehicles, you can't even get one lane down it, and then kids are darting out between the cars. I've witnessed a few almost accidents going there, so we're just kind of trying to make it a easier route for coming and going traffic on that street.
And from my understanding, it was a few years ago, they did a survey street by street to see what accommodations we can make, and they had recommended that before, but I don't know if we had found that report. It
I
had
don't have it.
been lost during the changing of hands of some city positions.
Just try to make the congestion better.
And I can get that. My one concern would be, and it's not necessarily, I guess, with that, but with the amount of roadways that are getting closed off in that area. I mean, I've gone to pick up my kids
Yeah.
from there, and it can be very, very challenging to find a place
Yeah.
to even park, and now we're removing even additional areas, so I think some consideration should be taken in that direction.
Was that no parking both sides or one
Well,
side?
Just
It's only on one side, but
Yeah.
people are parking on both sides, so then
Yeah.
nobody, like I've gotten stuck several times, you can't go anywhere.
Right.
You can't turn this way because of the cone, but then you can't go straight, and then if you have everyone congested right here, you can't even turn, so you're essentially just waiting for something to clear up the parking, basically, them getting back in their cars, and the gazebo pickup sometimes can take a while, but they've done a really good job about getting a little bit quicker, so that was just our thought process. I've had several people ask me about it, and then
I think it's definitely a good move.
Yeah.
I definitely see the concern there. I would encourage some.
but it won't be both sides. It definitely will not be both sides, because then that would really take, like you said, a lot of parking.
Do
you get further south of there, one side is no parking, but
Right.
for some reason it doesn't extend
doesn't extend
on.
Yeah, and we're just basically gonna extend it, is what we talked about.
Okay. That's always
Also,
been a
current
challenge. yeah.
prohibition about parking with so many feet of a stop sign
Mhm.
that as a routine is ignored.
Yeah.
That could be enforced, I think.
Mhm.
Does council have any other questions? Thank you. Next item is the Sanitation Committee meeting held on September 23rd, 2021. Let's see. Brandy, were you there for that?
No, I missed that. And I half lied a while ago. I missed the September meeting, but I was there for the October meeting, so. But no, I wasn't there at this one.
Well, Greg or Troy, would you like to?
The main discussion is on the sanitation is equipment. We're in a position that all of our equipment is worn out. We are looking and pricing to lease or buy new, or if we can fix, but that was the main topic of discussion, and that's what we're still doing, is discussing.
Does council have any questions? Thank you. Next item is Street and Alley Committee meeting held on September 28th, 2021. We primarily talked about, we minimally talked about the wrapping up of college between Barnes and Flynn. Some little things there. And then we talked about future projects being concrete out here on 4th Street in between College and Flynn, and what a timeline would look like for that project. We discussed options of either self-performing or contracting, and how that might look if we did a combination of self-performance versus contracting in terms of timelines and budget. And but when we left that meeting, the instructions for staff were to go ahead and bring back some more information on what it would take to move that project forward with all the different considerations. I'm happy to answer any questions. Try to.
When that work begins, what will they do with the fire department?
So the plan would be that we would have the first part of the project be in front of the fire department and, excuse me, we would leave a path for the fire department to go, so, but it would probably be north instead of, they probably wouldn't have one way or the other. They would have one way to go, but not both ways. And the first section that would be completed would be in front of at least a portion of the fire station, so that, I feel like I'm getting it wrong.
We talked about basically to the south side, I believe, of the doors to the north, which we was hoping to try to relocate the trucks and stuff for the time being, weather allowing.
Weather permitting, yeah.
And, basically possibly, get it tore out and then, have it prepared, and possibly hire someone that could just do it basically in a day, at the most 2 days, get it poured in there, and then probably have it set for about a week to be able to drive on it. So I think week and a half, we'd have to relocate probably.
For the whole block, we'd be looking at, maybe 4 or 5 days of construction, but not all at once. And so that's kind of where it's at. We're going to hear more about that when we have our next meeting. Any other questions? We'll just make Brian jump.
I was like, if you showed up for me, you knew.
Next item is the Alva Hospital Authority meeting held on September 28th, 2021. Mr. Bowman.
The hospital board meeting, I think, was a pretty routine meeting. The Alva newspaper had a great article that talked about each specific of the meeting. I think our biggest concern is the vaccination mandate, which could affect 15 to 25% of the folks there. Is that about the right number? The hospital has elected to just kind of be on the down low for now and not force it until they're forced to do it. So anyway, that's where it stands.
Any questions from the council for Mr. Bowman? Thank you, Greg. Next item is the Water Wastewater Committee meeting held on September 30th, 2021. Randy, I think you were at that one.
Yes, I was. Which has been a while, but I know on the high school water line, it says we're waiting on all the material, and I'm not sure. Is it, we're still in waiting?
We're still waiting.
Okay. The water well, the drilling, they were just starting to do it. I don't know where we're drill or have they started, or I'm going to have to give updates.
I don't, they have started the process, but I don't know where they're at on that. I apologize, I haven't followed up on that one.
We talked about updating the water and sewer maps, and which I guess would try to map out all the lines and stuff. And I think we talked about around $5,000 approximate cost. I don't remember about the CDBG project.
We had just had discussion on if we were going to look at a
Okay.
CDBG project, we need to start working on that now to prepare for next spring.
Back on like the water well, we're trying to see about a study of longevity of the well field. And I think we talked about approximately $15,000 to do that study. Water meter update. I think we've replaced most of the ones, but we're having trouble getting some in to replace those.
So we are trying to prepare for the cold season and knowing that we're going to have to potentially replace more meters as we come into the cold season. A lot of times issues with freezing, when things start to get cold, you can have the meter piece freeze. And so supply on those is slow, and so we were trying to get ahead of that and order ahead to anticipate our needs for the winter time.
And then I believe the last thing we had talked about working on replacing some of the sewer lift pumps at the stations and everything, so I think that was in discussion.
We also decided that our next meeting, we will take a tour of the well fields.
Yeah.
So. Does council have any questions? Thanks, Randy. Next item is Parks and Buildings Committee meeting held on October 11th, 2021. Let's see. Greg, can you share a report on that? Or Sadie?
Would you like to talk?
Go ahead.
Okay. We talked about the pool. We had a draft of the memo that they would like to send to engineer. So, because they have to have that to get some grants. So we we did take some recommendation. We like both of them, but we did take some part of it and add it to the other to complete it. And Angelica was going to get that back to Kay and Mr. Barton. And after that, we toured the professional building to kind of look at the lights, the LED, making all the casings the same, and whether or not we should bid out internal or local, or have OG&E do it, correct?
No.
How-
Oklahoma LED, we had a proposal from Oklahoma LED previously to do an LED light conversion, and we were working on getting bid specs put together so that we can bid that project out, so that we would allow local bidders to also.
Yeah, and there'll probably be about 3 different, like new or just, the casings, because there is some ways they said that you could still do it without ripping it all out and doing totally new. So there'll be 3 different options for the bidders. And then what else did we talk about? So we toured that over there. talked about signage out front and getting the signs placed so when we have people in there and housed, you can see it from the outside, because right now, there's no way to know who's in there unless you just know. So make that a little bit more visually nice looking. And what else did we, what was that it?
Those are things I have.
So, any questions?
Council have any questions? All right. Thank you, Sadie. Next item is the Alva Public Library Board meeting held October 11th, 2021. Mr. Dowling.
For the month of September, there were 1,820 items checked out from the library. And the library, since it's had its meeting rooms open, they've been reserved. They had 5 meetings for the month of September, and several room reservations have been booked for the next couple of months. So I think people are utilizing that resource. They were notified that they were awarded the ARPA target grant for the public libraries, and they should be filing that paperwork. I think that should, fix a few things around the library and focus on their books. I think either through this grant or another one, they're looking at extending their wireless coverage to externally to accommodate people outside the buildings and stuff like that. The library staff, it was conducting a 1-week book sale, and that was fairly successful with a few donations, and are looking at doing, with the remaining books, doing a book bag sale. Put several of the leftover books and sell them that way, kind of in large groups. One of the major things is we reviewed the policies, including the borrowing policy, so we updated the no fines, and, no fines for all the library books except ones that are obtained from the library through a lending program from other libraries. We can't not move their fines. But, and then internet and usage policy and public policy, which was pretty routine, typical library rules, don't make them up. People are there to study and learn and use internet safety wisely, like your mother was looking at your browsing history. And then we had the Little Explorers activity bag has been successful. The demand has increased to 36 that they're making a week, and they'll evaluate the numbers, I think, and continue the program until at the end of each month, but they're planning on continuing it to December with the hope that in January they'll be able to go back to their in-library program. They are also working on a program with the elementary schools to do a themed bi-weekly book display for all ages, and so I think they're looking forward to that. But I think that pretty much wraps up the meeting, and I guess we'll continue to evaluate policies, I think, just throughout the next few until we get them all wrapped up and approved.
Does council have any questions for Taylor? Thank you. Next item is the Alva Regional Airport Commission meeting held on October 12th. Pretty light agenda. We did hear in our reports from staff that September had the highest amount of fuel sales in the last at least 12 months. That was a look-back period on the report that we were given, probably longer than that. And it was about $10,000 more than in the month of August. So the biggest, I think, indicator or predictor of that, of why that increase has happened is one, the weather was all right in September, but two, that was right after we got added to a commercial aviator list, and we've had some pretty cool aircraft come into our airport here in the last 6 to 7 weeks or so. It's been, of course, out there where I work, we can hear them fly over, and every once in a while I get a glimpse of one of them. There's been some good stuff coming in, and they're buying fuel. They like our fuel prices. We're on their list that they get to see, airports to land at. So that was good to hear in his report. The only other item for action was the acceptance of a donation from the Gene Smith family, which would be Larry Smith's family, his folks. But it was 2 World War II military jackets and an April 1942 Daily Oklahoman news article that talks about some connections to Alva and what was going on at the time. So the board approved to graciously accept those donations, and we'll be getting an acknowledgement out to the family for those gifts. They are on display currently in the museum out there at the airport. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions. Okay, thank you. Next item is the Finance Committee meeting held on October 18th, 2021. Mr. Martin.
Really a pretty routine meeting, nothing unusual to report. As of September 30th, cash balances for the City of Alva cash account is at almost 1.6 million. Cash and investments totaling 3.7 million. Overall funds, we are 23% of budgeted revenue and have expended 21% of those budgeted expenses. Sales tax, sales and use tax came in at $355,000. This is down 7% from August, but up 11.5% from September of 2020. Some of the large claims, we had airport fuel at $20,000, street and alley fund between asphalt and crack sealer, a little over $35,000. We purchased a skid steer for $36,000. Payroll was at $243,000. And then we finished the meeting with general discussion on the financial impact a grant writer would have on the city. And then we also discussed ARPA funding, its impact on the city and county.
Does council have any questions?
Is the skid steer the one for sanitation?
It actually, I mean, it just came in.
Yep.
Okay.
What, the grant writer for the city, was that determined to have a positive impact, or would it not necessarily something they're interested in?
I mean, it was just general discussion
general
today.
Okay.
I mean, we were just talking about the possibilities of it, and
Just getting the ball rolling.
yeah,
Okay.
I think it's something to definitely take a look at that the city could benefit from, but just general discussion today.
I think it really came down to it's not a budgeted expense, so what that looks like and what the impact on the budget
Okay,
and the long term.
possibilities. Fair enough.
I think the consensus was it would be a good investment if we
At some
Can
point.
pull it off.
decided where we were going to take the money from to be able to afford it. We feel like it would have a return on investment.
Just out of curiosity, what is the going rate for that type of service?
Well, we were advised to, if we were looking at a part-time position in the $20 an hour range, so, say it was 20 hours a week, that'd come to about $20,000 to $25,000 a year. Maybe another $5,000 in expenses to, have, computers and office equipment, that kind of stuff. Those are just ballparks. Haven't shopped.
Yeah, but no, I mean, that's a better price point than I thought.
And there is potential with CDBG grants that if we get our grant writer credentialed with CDBG, any of the administrative fees that the CDBG pays, we would be able to retain those and not have to lose those in the grant.
Because I would say, from my understanding, part of the package of being a member of OML is we get free access to software that allows us to help more quickly look up grants, so it'd be good to utilize.
Well, I think hopefully, somebody like that would be really knowledgeable of what's out there, so it would be more likely a good return. I mean, that we get somebody good writing it, we'll have some good, possibly grants coming in, so I mean,
I mean, there's millions out there.
Yeah, I mean, but just to get a hold and put the right paperwork in somewhere so they can be a good investment.
But yeah, like Connor said, so far, just an initial discussion in finance, but seems favorable. Any other questions for the Finance Committee? Next item is the City Mayor's Report. I met with a small group of students from Northwestern interested in learning about the pool and maybe some community service opportunities that might be present with that. And so answered some of their questions, gave them a little bit of the history of the pool and that sort of thing. And they were going to, whether it's a real project that they pursue or one that they just write about pursuing, it was good to be able to visit with them for a little bit. Attended the Municipal League board meetings earlier this month, and at that meeting there was quite a bit of discussion on strategy for use of the ARPA funds. We did find out that there's maybe a lessening of the guardrails, however, on how we use those funds. However, that maybe is not defined, and it's not sure how it would be. For certain, the use of those funds can be used for water and sewer infrastructure projects. There is quite a bit of ongoing discussion at the state capitol regarding broadband throughout the state, and so the ARPA funds can also be used for broadband, but looks like coming down the pipe there's going to be quite a bit more opportunity for state funding for broadband, particularly with multi-jurisdiction projects. So, they advised us to be, working towards getting with other, cities and counties to see what kind of multi-jurisdictional projects we might be able to accomplish, because those would be looked at more favorably when the state goes to dole out the money they have available. That's, we need to, and we have started having some discussions in our committee meetings about, how we might use the funds that we get. Have they been deposited yet? We're still waiting on them to be deposited. But we have about 3 years to use them, and so the challenge is going to be making sure that we use them most cost effectively as possible for the greatest benefit of the city. But there will be strings attached to what we can use them for. Fortunately, though, the strings that are attached are things that we need in our town. So I think we're going to continue having discussions about how we use the ARPA funds, but before long we will have them and we'll be making decisions on how we use them instead of just discussions. So that was talked about quite a bit. The other cities,
They'll be deposited in 2 deposits, correct? We'll get 1/2 and then...
I think that's correct. Okay. $800,000 altogether is what we're slated to get. The rest of the OML meeting, and I'll give you some dates, but coming up, we pretty much approved just future meeting dates. Coming up December 7th, there will be a Municipal League regional meeting in Woodward. They haven't got a final date yet, but on either January 27th and 28th or February 17th and 18th will be the Congress of Mayors. For those of you that have attended that in the past, it's going to be a 2-day event this year, planned 2-day event. The last several years it's been show up the evening before and there's a little reception, but there'll be actual planned activities to go on for both days. Probably about a half day each day, so it may not be any longer of an event, but that's, if you haven't been to that, or even if you have, that's a good event to go to. We did discuss that the annual conference next year will be on September 13th and 15th. And then, after we talked about those dates, They did give a brief presentation without a lot of specifics what it would mean for our city, but a need to look at our ward lines since the most recent census has been conducted. So we need to get some more specific information on that, see where our ward lines need to be, if they need to be redrawn, and how they need to be redrawn based on population. So a lot of committee meetings. I'm excited about the work that we're doing, and right now it just feels like a lot of work, but it's going to turn into accomplishments. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
What was the date on the Congress mayors?
One of two. It's either the 27th and 28th of January or the 17th and 18th of February. We'll actually meet for some of our things because the situation with capital construction, we'll meet for some of our things at the Reed Center in Midwest City, and that'll be where we stay.
January, which one? January?
27th and 28th. I'll get you the actual dates when they're finally approved, but you can try to mark those out if you can. Any other questions? All right. Next item is the city business manager's report.
So I just wanted to revisit the open positions that we still have with the city. We're still always looking for EMS personnel. We are looking for water wastewater worker, sanitation workers, a street department worker, and we're still needing part-time people at the rec center. That's a big need for that. We'll be coming into basketball season hopefully soon as the roof project gets completed. And that being said, definite need for part-time staff during basketball season. And then we're still looking for seasonal mowing, groundskeeping personnel. We had 8 positions available. We were unable to fill all 8 positions. I think we ended up with 4 positions throughout the summertime, and when college started back up, we're down to 1 position, and so we have a definite need for that. It is seasonal, but there are other things besides just mowing. Once mowing season is complete, there are some other items that we will be looking to keep staff on for a little bit longer. So, no, we're not just looking at a few weeks where we have a definite need for some assistance there. So, if you know someone or have someone who can come apply, who'd like to apply, have them come get an application from City Hall and turn it back in. There's also an application on our website as well. I wanted to give a shout out to our street department. They worked really hard to help prepare for homecoming for both Goldbug and Northwestern homecoming. On short notice, hung banners, helped with getting the streets painted, and just did a lot of general work to get that completed and ready to go. I know Chief Miller has been talking about, we're hoping to start fire hydrant testing soon, so I wanted to let everyone know that would be coming. So if you see that going on, that's just our annual fire hydrant testing. We're trying to change the time frame of it. We generally do that in the summertime, but that has also led to some issues. We sometimes find issues with our water service lines during that time, and so trying to do it in a time frame that's not in the middle of summer when our water is in high demand. So we should be starting that soon. So if you see that going on, you'll know what that's about. And then I also spoke with our auditors. We were anticipating having our annual audit on the agenda for acceptance tonight. They are still wrapping up loose ends. I don't think there's anything new come to light, just working on getting all the reports written and everything wrapped up and ready to be done and presented to you guys. So I did talk with Chris Angel on Thursday of last week, and he told me we should have it on the November agenda. So I just wanted to let everyone know on that. And then next week, Mayor Parker and I will be attending the Teeny Tiny Town Convention in Woodward. It's a hard one to say. I know that there's supposed to be a lot of things related to economic development in our small cities there. So hopefully we'll bring back some additional information on that. And then we've also been in some conversations with Woods County, through the Woods County Economic Development Committee, about broadband infrastructure, just some general beginning conversations on what that looks like, what's going to become available as far as grants and other funding opportunities for rural Oklahoma. So don't have a lot of information yet, just still a lot of general discussions there. Are there any questions I can answer?
Nick, you mentioned Rec Park. When is that? I mean, I haven't been out by there, so I don't even.
They've been working on it, and of course, we've had rain and wind and all kinds of things. They hope to have the gym open by the end of this week. I know, we're getting ready for basketball season, and they're starting to have practices and things like that in the gym. So their plan was to get the gym section completed first, and I have not heard that it wasn't completed at the end of last week. But I know Courtney's been out, and I haven't had a chance to talk to her to see where we're at on that. I know the windows have not been delivered, because that's another piece of the project, is that they'll replace the west wall, the windows, and the west panel as well. And the windows haven't been delivered yet. And I know that then starting that west side was going to be contingent on the windows being delivered. So we're still in process there, Randy.
Any other questions for Angelica? I meant to mention in my report that we do have some open positions coming up on the Recreation Complex Board. I say open positions, terms expiring. J.C. Heaton, Shane Hansen, Chad Fisher, their terms are expiring in actually this month, at the end of this month. And so if council members have any suggestions for other members, I would be happy to hear them from you. I hope to have a recommendation by next meeting. Okay, next item, number 9, remarks and inquiries by citizens. Public comments will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. We ask it, if you have a comment, that you please approach the podium and identify yourself. Well, we're glad you're all here. Item 10 is discussion and action to approve a change to the zoning from residential RG8 to residential RG6 for the construction of a large steel building for storage and an apartment at 411 Olive Street. Am I stealing your thunder? All right. On August 23rd, the Planning Commission met and had a hearing regarding the zoning change for 411 Olive Street. Essentially, when they ruled on this, it's determined that in its current zoning as an RG8, there is not enough square footage on the property in order to do any construction on the property. So the Planning Commission did vote to rezone that as an RG6, which would allow for the property owner to build on the property. Of course, they didn't rule on what type of building or anything like that, but the landowner or property owner did say that they were going to build a metal building with living quarters in it. So, but whatever would be permitted would have to fit into the requirements for permitting in an RG6 area after that. But since the Planning Commission has recommended approval of this rezoning, it now comes to City Council for consideration and action. So, like I said, the Planning Commission's recommendation was to approve. I think there was one dissenting vote.
Is what they're desiring to build on the lot even allowable under RG6? That's the question.
Do you have an actual proposal of what they're building yet?
I don't. It just said a storage shed with living quarters in it, which is allowed to do. What the facade or what it looks like, I have no idea. I mean, it's a small, brief description.
Right.
That they turn in.
Really what we're probably trying to do tonight is it's zoned as RG8, which probably doesn't even have 8,000 square feet, so we're actually getting it down to what it should be zoned at. And then bobbing hoops and hoops and everything they gotta jump through to get possible a building put on, or would be handled by actual, or codes and stuff, that it's a piece of property that is owned improperly right now, basically.
It's like many properties in town that they're zoned larger than their footprint allows them to be, so.
Well, there's more, it's smaller than 8,000 square feet, a lot of them are, you know, if it's
Oh,
RDA, yeah, so we're getting it down to where it could be qualified, I mean.
And I guess if the property that I'm thinking about, it's overgrown with weeds and it's not anything good to look at currently, is the way it sits, so.
They tore the structure down
Okay,
and then couldn't do anything with it. So, yeah, they do have a maintenance issue of overgrown weeds.
So would the motion actually be just change the zoning not to include the construction of large steel building, because that's not, because we're not gonna approve the construction of this large steel building, so just, basically the motion just be to approve, change the zoning to RG6.
I think so.
Okay, so I'd make a motion to change the zoning on 411 Olive Street to RG6.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Stelling and a second by Mr. Brooks to approve zoning change for 411 Olive Street from RG8 to RG6. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Stelling,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Dowling,
yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Beer.
Yes.
Next item is discussion and action to approve the suspension of any further zoning change request pending the finalization of the strategic plan. So the other thing that the Planning Commission has talked about is that we need to give them, we've been talking about for 2 years now, and they've been part of those discussions too, but having a zoning plan for our city that takes into consideration where we want commercial development, takes into consideration what types of residential development we want, takes into consideration, those zoning lines and cleaning up some areas and that sort of thing for consistency's sake. They have been, I've mentioned this at a previous council meeting, I can't recall which, if it was last month or the month before, but over the last several months, they've had numerous requests for zoning changes, and we need to get to the point where we've got the long-term plans in place, so that they are not trying to guess what is going to be an appropriate or inappropriate future use of the property. The Planning Commission on their next meeting should be hearing the first part. There'll be a public hearing, and then the first part of this recommendation would be with the Oklahoma Boulevard corridor and cleaning that up. And so the next meeting of City Council, there should be that on there. But being that we're not prepared to have the entire plan presented to City Council, I think it's best that we go ahead and get moving and approve parts of it, so that when people request zoning changes that are relevant to the parts that have been completed, they can still move forward. But the long-term plan isn't to spend a lot of time. I mean, there has been a lot of time spent on this up to this point, and so the long-term plan, or the short-term plan here, is to just get those plans put together, put on paper, have the hearings, and approve or disapprove, whatever, but have something concrete that the Planning Commission can use as they know this is going to be our guidelines moving forward. So they're asking that we suspend zoning change requests until that time.
What's the expected time frame on, their expected time frame of having a finalization?
We in January?
I mean, I think it's turning out to be a little bigger than what we thought it was gonna be.
It's probably January, maybe longer, but
Would we be willing to entertain a time frame in the suspension as opposed to just a open-ended pending the finalization of the strategic plan? And this is something we've been working on for 2 years, or talking about doing for 2 years, and still haven't made a whole lot of traction on. And leaving that open-ended, I think, gives us a target of whenever, as opposed to we need to have this done by a certain date.
I'm not
So-
opposed to that. I'd like to have some,
I know the strategic planning deal, I mean, it kind of, we were meeting and then kind of up towards the COVID deal and stuff, and of course, Joe Don was here, and then we was kind of waiting on the manager, and then then it was COVID and this and that, so it has been a lax, but I really expect to see longer than January. I mean, I like that idea too, because I'd hate to see a broad brush, I mean, because basically, I mean, I don't mind, suspending, more idea, the corridors and stuff as far as, the commercial, this and that, but for like offsets where we've got RG8s that really need to be RG6, if somebody wants to do something with it, we put them in a bind to hold them up, you know, to where, basically, that's what they should be anyhow, is a smaller zoning, it'd just be kind of piecemealing in there. I mean, we've basically done three properties that would fit into the, actually change the zoning between Flynn and up on Maple and then on all of this stuff, so I kind of hate to, you know, it's kind of a broad brush.
Brian, you have something to contribute?
I just want you, when you guys determine a date, that there's a lot of legal notices, because if we change someone from, say, an RG8 to a commercial league zone, we still are required to notify everybody around there and that property owner. So what's that, 14 days and a public notice in the paper? I mean, it takes time, so don't shorten yourself on this, because the girls in the office are working really, really hard to get it done. But as we go through this process, it takes several weeks to get one portion done, and we're doing multiple properties right now, and we're on week 2. So take that into consideration also.
I don't know if it's possible, I'd rather see the suspension on any type of commercially zoned, not necessarily the RGs and stuff to affect them.
I feel like the public has a fundamental right to petition us for these changes, though, to property owners. I hate to see a suspension. I mean, basically, we're suspending their rights, you know, which is fundamental.
An avenue of relief from something that they could be under.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some issues with it, but still, it's it's an issue of their property rights, I think.
Considering that the planning commission is given its powers and prescribed by state law, are we legally able to do this?
Oh, the planning commission can only make recommendation to us.
Oh, that's right, I'm thinking board of adjustments.
Can't the planning commission basically handle that kind of internally in their own meetings, just basically say that, you know, have something come in that's actually commercial and say, you know, we're not gonna recommend this, but if there's another Olive Street or Flint Street come in, and then they can let that flow through.
I just feel like if we're gonna do this, there are way more stipulations than just a blanket suspension. There's a time frame, and I think that time frame is gonna vary. You know, if we're talking about the Boulevard corridor being done and having that process completed in, I mean, I don't know when, but let's say 2 weeks, do we really want the suspension on that area to be considered? Because this is stating till a finalization of a strategic plan, not of a review of that particular zoning area.
I would suggest that it not be held. I mean, if we finish part of it, that part's, I mean, in my opinion, that part's ready to go.
And I agree, but, and I guess a motion could be made in that direction, but I think that would be pertinent to the motion, and a time frame, because I don't feel like, my thoughts on it are 180 days. That's twice what they're asking for to January. It's 6 months. It's gonna be the 6 months of winter in which most zoning changes that are gonna slow down during the winter time just because of the weather anyways. And gets it back, in the summer when a lot of construction and things start to pick back up, we're back to where we can do that. That's kind of my thoughts. Would is 180 days a reasonable time frame in your opinion, given the notices that are required, or?
To do the whole town, or do,
By the corridor.
I mean, if you guys haven't had the opportunity to look at the zoning map, I implore you to come to my office or come to City Hall and let me explain that to you.
We'll go get it.
To show it to you. We have a lot of issues. That's why you're seeing so many of these. 180 days is a lot of work. We could probably get Oklahoma Boulevard, College Avenue, 281 South, and get all the commercial neighborhoods taken care of in 180 days and have all the public meetings.
But I would say that 180 days isn't necessarily, it can be revisited at that point in time. If we don't have the work completed to have everything finalized at that time. I know your wish is that we'd have it all done by then.
Oh, yeah, we need to be done.
But at the same time, it's just revisiting it at that point in time and deciding if we continue forward on that path or,
My biggest thing is if we're gonna suspend it, I wanna see progress, in opening that back up.
Well,
What Troy's saying, I think that's a valid point, we're talking, this is people's property and we're saying, you're stuck. Which albeit they bought it with those stipulations in the first place, but.
I think probably, while the notices and legal descriptions and all that may take the bulk of the time, I think the actual plan won't take as long and we can have a plan in front of you, whether or not it's gone through the hearing processes and all the legal notices. I think we can have a plan in front of you much more quickly than.
We can't approve it without those public.
No, we can't approve it, but that would be the plan you're looking for.
Can the motion just say, just for the suspension of, for commercial zoned areas to be changed, not RGs?
Well, I think the majority of the changes being requested have been around residential, haven't they?
Well, they've
they've been
to commercial.
To change to commercial, yes.
And that's what we're talking about as far as the corridor, not the neighborhoods. And if it's gonna affect the neighborhoods, I agree with the motion that says for, commercial along the corridor, because that's basically what we're waiting on.
So what you're proposing is we're basically, the only suspension is we're not converting anything to commercial.
All right.
So, that's, could be very detrimental to business growth. If we've got a business that's wanting to move in and say, well, too bad, we're not making any changes, even though you've got a perfectly reasonable area.
Well, that's basically
We're not gonna hear it.
how this is going towards. I'm just trying to parcel out the RGs that are out in the neighborhoods and stuff, because that's kind of more what we're shooting at is the commercial. Somebody's request commercial, which there's already a lot of commercial up and down the corridor, but some of it's just trying to make it more consistent.
And you're right. The unfortunate part of that is it's a lot of residential. So if I want to put in a business, that may not be an option for me because it's currently occupied. There's very little open space. 3 lots.
There's quite a bit of agricultural space that needs to come in as commercial districts, especially out to the east, annexation out there, and even to the west of Windy Ford, that's agricultural that needs to be brought into commercial.
And so by doing what you're proposing, we're stopping that. And we already, I think that's pretty understood that the idea with a lot of that property out, especially east, that is currently zoned agricultural, the intent of that, especially with the arena coming in, is to go commercial. So do we really want to stop and hinder that development?
But that's
today?
basically what this, I mean, it's kind of a blanket proposal now. I was just, and it would be commercial plus RGs. I'm just trying to parcel it into just specifically commercial, not the RGs.
Is it possible to go back to the planning commission and ask them to narrow their field of issues so that we cannot just apply a blanket statement of not doing it, and see if they have anything that they could work out amongst themselves, maybe table this till next?
That's kind of where I'm getting at.
Because I think we all agree that, from my discussion that I've heard, is that we do not, it's difficult to agree to a blanket proposal, and if we had something that was a little bit more narrow focused, it would be a lot more palatable.
I mean, yeah, we are the governing body, so, I mean, yes, we can do that.
Well, that being said, isn't this just putting it, I mean, say I want to move my house to commercial. It's still got to go through the vote, and if the strategic plan is not to have these little commercial areas, it's going to get voted down, right? So why would we need to do anything?
But
We don't have
the worry is that they're going to approve something, and it's not going to be consistent with what the overall plan is moving forward.
Well, if they approve it, it still comes to us, and we could approve or disapprove it at that time.
Well, no, even that though creates the same concern that it's not going to be consistent. Now, I agree, we can't drag our feet on this, and we've got to get it done, because we can't just take those rights away from people. I mean, we've got to have a plan and get it done.
Because I'm thinking
But
it's
how
going to be at least
many
a
more
6 month.
pockets are we going to create, where we've got, anomalies in our zoning?
I mean, I don't have a problem with creating pockets. I mean, it's, like I said, it's people's property, I mean, to do with it as they please, as long as they're not infringing on their neighbor's rights. That's freedom. I mean, that's what it is.
I mean, if you look at other communities, their zoning is significantly more detailed than ours. We have 3, 4, I guess if you include like mobile home districts, there's what, 6 residentially zoned areas. Lots of communities have substantially more that dictate a whole lot more. So I mean, I don't think pockets are necessarily a problem, other than the fact that we have such broad stroke changes.
Well, we've got pockets that property owners can't do anything with.
Yes.
But no, we'd be looking at rezoning, we'd be looking at planned urban development, we'd be, all of those things. Because some things, we don't want to change the purpose right now, because if we change the purpose right now, they can't continue to do what they're doing. But we would want to have, a planned urban development, so that when any future changes to it are along those lines. Planning Commission asks that you guys consider it, so it's before you.
Let me ask a question, maybe just from the legal side of this, but they have requested a suspension until the finalization of the strategic plan, not that is in place, not that the corridors have been all commercial. That all the people have been notified. They're just saying, develop the grand plan, because even then, with that plan, they can then start acting again if they need to do, even within that pocket, if they know what the city's desire is as to their overall strategic plan. I mean, so is there some time frame? I have same concerns as some of the council people about suspending things, but is there some time frame for just development of that plan? Can that be done in 60 days? Not giving notice to every single landowner that that's what we're doing, but that's our plan. Our plan is to go down the boulevard and have a commercial zone. Our plan is to move RG8s to RG6s. I mean, is that something that can be done in 30 days or 60 days? Not enactment of the overall plan, but just
That
think that plan is loosely already established.
We just can't enact it
We just
until
need
we have those notices, right? I mean, that's what I'm
I
understanding.
mean, Randy and I could sit down with the map and put all this on a map and present it to the city council.
But once the city council approves that, then the
Then we can go through the
commission can
process.
then say, okay, we now know that they've approved this to be R6s as opposed to R8s. So if somebody comes in with a zoning change, we can go ahead and make that change and not be screwing up the system. Well, it seems that that's kind of the big objective.
So could that piece be, how long would that piece take? How long would it take to have a written proposed plan that could be presented that we can operate and work off of? Whether it's,
Maybe by November, but for sure.
Yeah.
so if we were to say 90 days, then starting January 1, basically, I mean, roughly, I don't know exactly what 90 days looks like, but that puts us roughly to the beginning of next year, we should be good.
Rick, was it, what you're just saying there, are we able to insert a timeline when it says until a strategic plan can be implemented?
Well, I think the implementation of the strategic plan is the actual approval by this council of that plan. It's now implemented. You still gotta go out and if you're gonna go down the corridor at Oakland Boulevard, for example, you still gotta give your notices and let there be hearings about that. But the strategic plan from the city would be, this is what we intend to do. This is our plan.
If we're thinking that it's, within 90 days or this and that, I still think it could be kind of handled internally with the planning commission that basically they just don't recommend it, knowing that this is coming about. I'm not in favor of just doing a blanket, suspension and everything. And then, because once we draw things out of you, so like I said, if we go draw our corridor and stuff, and then we have a plan there, and then you address that suspension to stop anything outside of our plan, I don't have a problem with it. But just, I kind of got the cart in front of the horse in a way. I'd like to see something before we do it.
I mean, I'll throw it out there. I'll make a motion to approve the suspension of any further zoning change request pending the finalization of the strategic plan or 90 days, whichever is greater or shorter.
Whichever is greater or shorter.
Whichever is shorter.
I have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Winters, a second by Mr. Martin to approve the suspension of any further zoning change request pending the finalization of the strategic plan or 90 days, whichever is shorter. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Dowling,
No.
Swallow,
I'm going to abstain.
Bowman,
No.
Stelling,
No.
Beer,
No.
Brooks.
No. All right. We will continue to consider zoning change requests as has been current process.
Can we request them to come back with better language?
I mean, could we
More direct, kind of more,
make a second motion on the
Focus.
same item?
Yes.
So,
basically table it, make a motion, I don't know, I'm asking a question first for you. Basically table it and ask them to come back with better language with the direction that,
Them who? Planning Commission?
yes, yes. if that's, sounds good, I'd make that a motion. If it doesn't, I want to withdraw.
I'm not sure exactly a motion, it just says come back with better language, gives them any actual direction or guidance.
Come back with a plan, and then we'll go on from there.
Their intent. Kind of, is that where you're going, like their intent and
Something a
when they're
little
gonna
bit more
start?
Focused to, instead of a blanket.
So
That's my problem.
are you wanting like a timeline and specific zoning changes that are, is that what you're asking for?
I mean, I'm still on the side of just, I don't mind somewhat a suspension with like the commercials, but I don't like a blanket including the RGs.
So if that was to be, that focus was narrowed to just commercial. So if we were talking suspension of any further zoning change requests pending the finalization of the strategic plan, or 90 days, whichever is shorter, of any commercial zoning changes, that would, is that kind of what you're?
That'd be fine with me. I just don't like a broad brush of including the whole city limits.
Is that a new motion or an amendment to a motion? At this point we voted, it would be a new motion.
It'd have to be a new motion, and
With what they're requesting, can we?
Why don't we just let this go and then get the
Okay.
plan and come back?
I agree. Well, I mean,
I think we can.
you got an idea of what we're kind of,
We've got all the stuff from the work
Spinning.
that the committee's done. We can come back next month with something.
okay.
Maybe
Maybe not next month.
maybe not next month, but maybe so. Just give me some blank maps, Brian, and some magic, some Sharpies. Let me get this straightened out.
No pressure.
We'll do color by number and we'll get it done. Okay. Item 12 is new business. There's nothing that meets the criteria for new business that I'm aware of. Anybody? All right. Item 13, remarks and inquiries by council members. I did want to publicly thank Brandon Sherman for his service on the council. Brandon was passionate about his role. He loved working with the council, and I have appreciated his input, even though maybe I haven't always agreed with his input. But Brandon was a good council member, and I do want to, even though he's not here, I'll say it in front of the camera, publicly thank him for his service to the city of Alva, and I'm sure he will continue to serve the community in many ways moving forward. So, and at that, Gale, I said it earlier, but welcome. We're glad you're with us, and we'll be getting you quite a bit of information to bring you up to speed, but that all will be forthcoming, and we're glad you're here. I'll have committee reassignments also coming up here pretty quick, probably before we meet again next time, because we've got committee meetings coming up between now and then. So, any other remarks by council members? All right. City council's adjourned. You want to be on the roll call?
They'll just be absent, returning late. It'll be noted in minutes, it'll be fine.
All right. We will now open the regular meeting of the Alva Utility Authority. When you're ready, please call the roll.
Winters,
Here.
Bowman,
Here.
Brooks,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Swallow,
Here.
Dowling,
Here.
Stelling, Beer.
Here.
All right, we still have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and proceed. Item 3 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at AUA meetings will be approved by one vote of the authority. Any trustee desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of the consideration and action on the following items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on September 20th, 2021. And item B, approval of claims in the amount of $169,971.13 and payroll expenses of $45,845.34. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Have a motion by Mr. Winters and a second by Mrs. Beer to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Beer,
Yes.
Stelling,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
And the Utility Authority meeting is adjourned. We will open the regular Alva Economic Development Authority meeting. The clerk's ready, please call the roll.
Dowling,
Here.
Stelling,
Here.
Swallow,
Here.
Beer,
Here.
Brooks,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Bowman,
Here.
Winters.
Here.
Item 3 is discussion and action on the consent agenda. All of the following items which concern reports and items of a routine nature normally approved at AEDA meetings will be approved by one vote of the authority. Any trustee desiring to discuss an item on the consent agenda may request that it be removed from the consent agenda and placed for discussion as the next item on the regular agenda. It will then be considered separately. The consent agenda consists of the consideration and action on the following items. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on September 20th, 2021. And item B, approval of claims in the amount of $40,176.36 and payroll expenses of $13,122.65. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Winters, a second by Mr. Stelling to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Winters,
Yes.
Stelling,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Dowling,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Beer.
Yes.
And the Economic Development Authority meeting is adjourned. Thank you.